Hello and welcome to the DSR Daily. I'm David Rothkopf, joined by Riley Fessler, who's at the beach. Oh my goodness. Riley, show us the beach. Come on, show us where you are.
Here's the beach.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Quite
This is a
lovely.
guy who knows how to live. And Minna Stein, still living in her parents' basement. No, that's not true.
I have a
That's
nice apartment, but it's not as nice as the beach. That's for sure.
yeah, no, it's nice. Riley is teaching us all how to live. Riley is sending us a strong message. She's saying it's early May. It's time to be some. It's only 6 weeks until the days start getting shorter again. Sorry to bring that, but you know what I'm saying. In other
Yeah,
words,
gotta
we're
enjoy
sort
it.
we're in that period of the year that's the best period of the year for everything except for news. Except, the news yesterday was kind of exciting. Why don't we start with you, Riley? Are you aware of news down there, or do they
We get
have news?
news.
Do they have news in North Carolina?
We've heard a little something, which is Robert Prevost, a 69-year-old American and former Augustinian leader, has been elected Pope Leo XIV, marking the first time a U.S. cleric has led the Roman Catholic Church. In his first speech, he emphasized peace, humility, and dialogue, while signaling continuity with Pope Francis's progressive approach, particularly on issues like migration and church inclusivity. His election has drawn global attention and mixed political reactions as he now faces the daunting task of uniting a polarized church and addressing global crises, including war, climate change, and the church's handling of sexual abuse.
Well, there's certainly a whole lot of challenges to being Pope, but it was a kind of exciting day because A, it was historical to have a guy come from Chicago, from the United States, although he's a dual citizen of the U.S. and Peru, where he did a bunch of his ministering, and he was actually a bishop in Peru. But he's a very smart guy. He's got a math degree. He has speaks, I think, 6 languages. He's been actively involved in the picking of bishops recently, and was very close to Francis. And I think, one of the things that is clear here is that although the church is certainly divided on some issues, uh, Francis, in picking so many of the College of Cardinals, the church came fairly quickly to the decision. I think there have been 270 odd other popes, and most of the time it takes a little longer, although recently it's happened more quickly. And I think, there is a kind of big consensus group within it around the kind of reforms that were promoted by Francis. That includes, of course, some issues where they're not, socially ahead of the curve. And I don't think anybody would expect, the head of the Catholic Church to be, um, super liberal, super progressive on everything, but on immigration, on climate, on taking care of those in need. He is, by any definition, what we in the United States would say was uh, progressive, and has actually taken J.D. Vance to task for this administration's immigration policies, supported tweets and things in the past on gun control policy. So he retweeted Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy back in 2017. And of course, it set MAGA world off. And Laura Loomer, the Pope's muse, the president's muse, sent out a tweet or Truth Social or however she communicates from her, den, and it said woke Marxist Pope, and a whole bunch of people on the far right see this as a problem. Norm Ornstein and I talked about this at some length yesterday on the Words Matter podcast. Are there political implications? And obviously, that's not the most important thing that comes when a new pope is named. But if that pope is from the U.S. at a moment of political crisis in the U.S., where there's a particularly egregiously cruel administration in place, it is going to have political consequences, and probably, net positive ones if you care about things like morality, ethics, values. And so, even with the controversies that Riley appropriately cited, this has to be seen as a kind of a net positive. As a personal note, I feel I came as close as I've ever expected to come to becoming Pope, because it was clearly a moment for a 69-year-old guy who was born in Illinois to become Pope. And that's me. And right? I mean, yeah, I'm Jewish, so I was kind of out of the running on that. And I'm not really big on organized religion, to be perfectly honest. So that may have kept me out of poping, because you got to kind of be big on organized religion. But I never expected to come this close, and I want to thank everybody who supported me and everybody who voted for me. Minna?
I was one of those people, and I was surprised when you didn't walk out.
Because those are good clothes. When you're a pope, I mean, it's a good outfit. I mean, it looks cool.
And I thought for sure it was going to be you, so my heart goes out to you.
Thank you, and I thank you for your support. And Riley was sleeping on the beach through the whole thing. But did you guys gather around the TV to watch this, Riley, or did you not?
No. The most we did was I looked at my phone and I said, "There's a new pope," and we all said, "Wow!" And then we went back to reading our books.
God, Zoomers will be the death of us all. I spent a lot of time on TikTok last night, and there was this whole thing, and it was great because it replaced all the college acceptance videos and so forth of everybody videotaping their reaction to the Pope. And I thought it was kind of weird because there were all these Catholic schools across America. And when it came out that it was a Pope was an American, the reaction to it was like he went to Villanova. It was like Villanova won a big basketball game. They were like, "Yeah, wow," and applauding. I was like, "Is that really how we react to a new Pope?" But they were cheering and whooping. And of course, for those of you who are following news, and we try to connect the stories here, it's in the eyes of many Villanova graduates, it's only the third miracle for Villanova of the week. The first two being the wins of the New York Knicks over the Boston Celtics, led by a couple of players from Villanova, who once led Villanova to national championship. So, big week for the biggest Augustinian Catholic university in America. Minna?
And his brother did confirm that he watched Conclave in preparation of the Conclave. So I was glad to hear that.
Yeah, no, I thought if I were the director of Conclave and I knew that the guy who actually was becoming Pope had actually watched Conclave before the Conclave, I would think that was pretty cool.
Right.
His brother also confirmed that he was a Chicago White Sox fan, which really crushed all the Chicago Cubs fans out there. And B, that when he was 7 years old, some lady across the street came up to them and said, "You will be Pope someday." And they were like, "What?" And then, they went back to his parents, who were like, "What?" His father was a superintendent of schools in Cook County in Illinois. And they were like, "What?" But there's always those stories, and it always gets a little really? The lady across the street said a 7-year-old would be Pope, and then he became Pope from Illinois? What? But that's what happened. We report it all here. You have to figure out why that would happen. Okay, Minna.
President Donald Trump has announced he will appoint Fox News host and longtime ally Jeanine Pirro as interim U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, replacing Ed Martin, whose nomination lost Senate support. Pirro, a former prosecutor and vocal defender of Trump, has a controversial history, including promoting false election fraud claims and being named in the Dominion defamation lawsuit that led to a $788 million Fox News settlement. Her appointment, which has not yet been confirmed by the White House, comes as Martin's interim term nears expiration and amid continued scrutiny over political loyalty and past associations in the Trump's Justice Department picks.
There are, as of this morning, if she actually takes this interim post, 23 former Fox News employees in the United States government. 23. As somebody on Blue Sky said this morning, more than enough for an entire football team, offense and defense. Of course, it's all offensive to anybody who's got any sense of what the government ought to be. This is a woman whose producer said she was nuts, who is an extreme extremist, who seems to share Pete Hegseth tendency to alcoholic excess, at least on one or more occasions, which is, leads you to ask, well, what's going on at Fox News that leads them all to do this? Couldn't be a worse choice for this job, except maybe if you were Ed Martin, who's kind of a neo-Nazi. But, she is for all intents and purposes as well. And it'll be interesting to see whether this actually happens, whether it's interim or not, and whether, Republicans who stood up to Ed Martin, like Tom Tillis, stand up to her, because she's an election denier. And how can you put somebody in a chief law enforcement position who's an election denier? Oh, yeah, maybe Pam Bondi was an election. Well, okay, there are a lot of election deniers out there, but still, it seems to me to be disqualifying. And it, I just, as a sort of a sad footnote to all of this, it was announced today that former Supreme Court Justice David Souter died at age 85 overnight. He served for 19 years on the court, was appointed by George H.W. Bush, and frustrated many conservatives by drifting increasingly to the center and even to a progressive stance on a lot of issues. He stepped down from the court and lived a very quiet life afterwards, was highly regarded by everybody associated with the court. And I only bring it up because there are loads of people in the United States who dedicate themselves to serving justice as was always hoped and intended by the founders when they established our justice system. Riley?
President Donald Trump abruptly fired Librarian of Congress Carla Hayden, the first woman and African American to hold the role, cutting short her 10-year term amid growing pressure from conservative groups accusing her of promoting radical content. The dismissal, delivered via email, drew sharp condemnation from Democratic lawmakers who viewed it as part of Trump's broader campaign to reshape federal institutions and censor cultural narratives. Hayden, celebrated for expanding public access to historical materials and promoting diversity, will be temporarily replaced by Deputy Robert Newland until a new appointee is named.
It's outrageous. It's part of the war on free speech and free expression in the United States. It's part of the war on women and women of color and people of color in the United States government. Disproportionate number of the people that they let go are women and women of color and people of color. And it is completely unjustified and shows that the people who once whined about weaponization of the government when the government was actually just doing its job prosecuting criminals are weaponizing every job, making every job political, attacking our system, attacking our fundamental rights, literally every place they can. Personally, I find the attack on cultural institutions to be particularly worrisome because, when people are trying to change a society, and autocrats or dictators or intolerant regimes do it, the place they start is cultural institutions. That's where the Taliban started. That's where ISIS attacked. When Putin went into Ukraine, he banned, speaking of Ukraine, he taught people Russian in the schools. He tried to erase the idea of Ukrainian culture in the parts of Ukraine that Russia controlled. The Nazis did the same thing. And taking over the Kennedy Center, shutting down the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for Humanities, are effectively shutting them down, shutting down the Institute for Museums and Library Sciences that support museums and libraries around the world, going after the Smithsonian as they have, now going after the Library of Congress. Doesn't take a detective to put all these pieces together. It's ugly, it's dangerous, needs to be called out, and needs to be monitored super closely.
FEMA acting administrator Cameron Hamilton was fired Thursday morning after publicly opposing President Trump's proposal to eliminate the agency, stating in congressional testimony that dismantling FEMA would not serve the public's best interests. His dismissal, carried out by top DHS officials at the direction of Secretary Kristi Noem, comes just weeks before hurricane season and amid plans to cut $646 million from FEMA's budget. David Richardson, a DHS official, has been appointed as acting administrator, while Trump's administration continues to push for shifting disaster responsibilities more heavily onto individual states.
Yeah, I mean, that's bullshit, right? The states don't have the money, and when the disasters hit, they're not going to be able to pay for this. People are going to suffer. You have to wonder what wounded Trump during his last term about FEMA. Maybe it was that people spoke out when he redrew the hurricane map with his Sharpie. Maybe it's because he was attacked for his horrible treatment during Hurricane Maria, where he was tossing paper towels to people in the crowd rather than actually getting any relief to the people of Puerto Rico. And I think maybe rather than putting him in the unsavory position of actually having to serve all Americans, he just wants out of the business. He wants the federal government out of it so he doesn't have to pick between red and blue states, or worse, actually do something for blue states when they are hit hard. But of course, this is profoundly irresponsible, and it raises other kinds of questions, because a nation that just lost 1 million people in a pandemic is eliminating every ability that it's got to identify or fight future pandemics. Nation that has seen a rise in climate catastrophes is seeking to eliminate the ability it has to deal with these climate catastrophes, either in their origin, because it's denying that they are actually associated with man-made behavior, and in their aftermath, because the elimination of FEMA and the desire of the federal government to get out of this business. Plus, of course, we've had along the way with FEMA, as in the case of the wildfires in and around Los Angeles, Trump promoting absurd stories about, water getting from the north to the south and his role in all of that. But what you've got here is a government that is systematically eliminating the most vital roles that the government plays in protecting the lives of its citizens, whether having to do with health, safety, education, national security, or other issues. It's appalling, and it's happening every single day. Riley, you are one story away from being able to go to the beach and enjoy that brilliant North Carolina sunshine.
It actually started raining, which I feel like is appropriate for our last couple of stories. So, it's matching.
I'm sorry.
The climate is matching my mood now. And it's going to continue with our last story, because Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has ordered a rapid ban on transgender service members, giving active duty troops 30 days and reservists 60 days to leave the military, following a Supreme Court decision allowing the Trump administration's policy to take effect. The move affects roughly 1,000 troops and reverses a Biden-era policy that had permitted transgender individuals to serve openly. Legal challenges continue, with advocates arguing the ruling doesn't override prior court orders deeming the ban unconstitutional and rooted in bias.
It's rooted in hatred. It's rooted in ignorance. Let's look at it this way in the context of the prior story and whether it makes us safer or not. There are 1,000 individuals who have decided that they want to serve their country, put their lives on the line in many cases. And they are being denied that opportunity because of a personal choice that they have made that has zero impact on their capacity to defend the country or on anybody else who is seeking to defend the country. It's hateful. It's bigoted. It's dangerous for America, because if you think for 1 minute that this is a war on trans alone, you're not paying attention. It's a war on DEI. It's a war on woke. It's a war on people who might stand up and support Palestinians as they are being slaughtered by Israelis. It's a war on people within the government who don't share the views of the president on a whole range of issues. It's a war on a culture that promotes diversity of opinion. It is the authoritarian playbook. And, it is the kind of thing that, again, was done by the Nazis, who targeted gays, who targeted gypsies, who targeted other groups that might be defined as other, because they found that there were pockets of prejudice in society that supported that, and that gave them the political impetus they needed to move forward with further changes or to consolidate their power. So it's much more than just trans. It's much more than just the Librarian of Congress. It's much more than just the head of FEMA being marched out of his office simply because he wants to protect people. It is the pattern underlying all of these things. And it is what we are watching, scrutinizing, and each of us in our own way, I hope, seeking to find ways to push back on, to call out, to resist going forward. Surely, where that's called for, we'll do it here. And we'll do it at the DSR Daily. We'll do it at all of our other podcasts. And we hope you will join us for those. And when you get the chance, go to the dsrnetwork.com, click on membership, become a member, and you will get a whole host of benefits. We'll talk more about some new ones coming next week. But here's the thing, and I bet you didn't even know this, Minna. It's Friday. That's why Riley's at the beach. Riley is going to have so much fun frolicking in the rain. No, it can't rain all day, Riley. It can't. And there must be a lot of sights and sounds nearby, places you can go. There's North Carolina barbecue.
Well, I can't really partake in that anymore now that I'm a pescatarian, sadly. But there's an aquarium nearby. It's only supposed to rain for 2 hours, so we're set. I
got to tell you something. If I were a fish and some guy came to my aquarium and said I'm a pescatarian, I don't know if I'd let him in.
That's what I was thinking.
You are an enemy of sea creatures.
I'll be licking my chops menacingly as I examine all of the creatures of the sea.
Creatures of the sea. All right. Well, we look forward to hearing about that when you get back on Monday. And Minna, I hope you do something less threatening and to the animal kingdom, at least over the weekend.
I'll spend the weekend being a friend to all sea creatures.
Remember, Pope Francis, who just recently left us, adopted the name of Francis of Assisi, who was, of course, noted for being kind to all creatures. He loved all animals, unlike Riley. Anyway, we'll resume this conversation and all this folderol on Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.